The eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. In this lone region of the world, for reasons little understood, herds of spinner, spotted, and common dolphins are accompanied by vast schools of yellowfin tuna. For nearly 40 years, purse-seine tuna vessels of U.S. and foreign registry have fished these waters for the prized yellowfin. By locating herds of dolphins, the fishermen also find the tuna swimming below. And in 30 years of seining for yellowfin, over 8 million dolphins have been killed in the process. Speedboats are launched to chase, slow, and corral the dolphins, the tuna mysteriously remaining with these air-breathing marine mammals. As the speedboats slow the herd, the mother boat turns hard to port, launching a skiff with one end of the mile-long net attached. Within minutes, as the bottom of the net is closed off, the dolphins and tuna are trapped. The fishermen, having no use for the dolphins, release as many as possible without allowing the tuna to escape. The sea is froth with panicked dolphins, fleeing from a confinement completely unnatural to them. Once the dolphins are free, the net is hauled and the tuna are scooped from the final bunch and loaded into vast deep freeze chambers. Incompetent captains, foul weather, and mechanical breakdowns create disaster sets, causing dolphins to become entangled and die in the nets. Yet without video evidence, the industry's claims of an insignificant kill could hardly be challenged. Posing as an itinerant adventurer with a video camera, Sam LaBudde signed on as a cook on a Panamanian tuna seiner.
Something that's been missing in the environmental community for years as a way to bring this issue to the American public is that there was no film footage of what's been happening. Even though this fishery's been going on for nearly 30 years, there was no way to get any documentation of the problem.
By the time Sam's vessel left Ensenada, Mexico, he was a trusted crew member, taking video, it was thought, only to document his adventures for family and friends.
To the fishermen on board my vessel, I was just a crazy gringo with a camera, which was fine with me. It allowed me to film a lot of things I probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise. The very first day of 1988, we had just received official permission to fish in Costa Rican territorial waters. We made a set on a herd of protected Costa Rican spinner dolphins. There were only supposed to be 9,000 of these animals worldwide in 1980, and we killed hundreds of these animals, hundreds of them. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. There were hundreds of dolphins trapped under the net, fighting for their lives, trying to reach the surface to breathe, and being impeded by the heavy nylon mesh on the surface of the water. There were dolphins being caught in the nets and hoisted aloft out of the water. Beaks and flippers were breaking right out of their bodies, and the dolphins were falling back into the water and being snagged again and pulled out. The animals are oftentimes dragged up through the power block and literally crushed alive. First time I saw the dolphins actually being killed, I wanted to scream. As the voyage progressed and we made more sets on dolphins and hundreds more dolphins died, the same sort of brutal deaths, I began to feel something like akin to a spiritual nausea. It was almost as if a part of me was dying inside, and my ideas about humanity were being reshaped. I think we caught 8 or 10 tuna total in this set.
Sam's video was just the beginning of his campaign to end the dolphin killings. When he showed the video to a Senate subcommittee that regulated fishing activities, the tuna canneries knew it was time for an overhaul of their purchasing practices. In April of 1990, Anthony O'Reilly, CEO of H.J. Heinz, which owned Starkist Tuna, made an announcement that sent shockwaves throughout the tuna industry.
Today we announced that Starkist will not purchase any tuna caught in association with dolphin. Starkist will sell only dolphin-free tuna.
Within days, bumblebee and chicken of the sea tuna followed suit.
And I think it would be a poor chief executive officer that was not attentive to his customers. And there is no doubt that in this particular case, because of the affection which children have for Flipper, and because of the gross scenes that were shown in the LaBudde film, there was a growing barrage of criticism, well orchestrated, which I think served to convey a growing sentiment among school children that the previous fishing methods were no longer accepted.
Sam's work to nearly end these killings, both on and off the tuna boat, received worldwide attention and won him the Goldman Award, the environmental equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize. The North Pacific, 1988. Hundreds of Japanese, Taiwanese, and Korean deep-sea vessels laying out tens of thousands of miles of net. The target? Tuna, salmon, and squid. But that's not all these nets catch. Not by any means.
It's a certainty that, like the Eastern Pacific tuna dolphin fishery, the North Pacific driftnet fishery is exacting a tremendous toll on marine mammals. In the case of the driftnet fishery, though, there was virtually no film footage or other documentation available to make the general public aware that a problem even existed. The environmental community has known for some time that we had a serious problem out here with the driftnet fleets, and it finally came down to someone going out and getting a first-hand look at what was happening within the fishery.
Sponsored by the Hawaiian-based nonprofit Earth Trust, Sam and 4 colleagues set out on a small sailboat, loaded with provisions and surface and underwater video equipment, to rendezvous with a Taiwanese driftnet vessel, whose captain they befriended in Hawaii, and who was under the impression that Sam and his crew were wildlife documentary filmmakers.
We all expected, as we headed north away from Hawaii, that we'd be seeing more and more wildlife as we got farther away from civilization. What happened was just the opposite. The first 2 weeks out, following in the wake of the driftnet fleet, all we saw were some flying fish and a few seabirds. It was very much like traversing a watery desert.
Knowing exactly where the driftnet vessel would be on a given day, the team sailed nearly 1,500 miles into the North Pacific, hoping to videotape for the first time ever an active driftnet and its incidental catch. As the captain welcomes them aboard, it doesn't take long to see firsthand the problem. Hundreds of vessels, their huge nets taking anything and everything that swims into their clutches. While team members talk with the captain, Sam motors out to the net to videotape the catch.
The first time I brushed up against a driftnet underwater, I was entangled and had to cut myself free. The nets are very fine, virtually invisible, and they have a tendency to collapse around whatever they come into contact with. Often entire schools of tuna would encounter these nets and be trapped. Sharks and seabirds were frequent fatalities in the nets, and at one point we found a baby common dolphin drowned just a few feet from the surface. The nets are pulled on board with the help of hydraulics. They're picked clean, and then the nets are transferred to the back of the ships with another set of hydraulics where they are stacked and made ready for being deployed that evening. It's a very continuous process, and it's easy to see why they're able to lay such vast quantities of net out night after night. It's a very efficient operation. It's also very wasteful. Not only are a lot of non-target species caught and killed in these nets, many of the target species, like squid and tuna that are trapped in the nets, actually fall out while the nets are being retrieved. It's not really too hard to appreciate the destructive nature of this fishery. In some ways, it's analogous to clear-cutting a forest in order to harvest a single species of tree. We'll probably never be able to fully grasp just how much damage has been done in the 10 years since these boats began fishing. We know so very little about the dynamics of the Pacific marine ecosystem, but it's certain that there have been serious depletions in populations to dolphins and other marine mammals since the fishery began.
Statutes of the Marine Mammal Protection Act allow native Alaskans an unlimited take of walrus, but only for subsistence. No raw or uncarved ivory could be sold. All carving of ivory had to be done by native Alaskans, and walruses killed for their tusks had to be consumed. In spite of the act, it was suspected that large numbers of these animals were being killed solely for their ivory, that uncarved ivory could easily be acquired, and that the bodies of these animals were being discarded at sea.
Yeah, we're here in Nome, Alaska, heading south, and we've been up here about a week, and what we've seen during that time are probably 100 to 200 dead walruses on the beach. These are largely, as best we can tell, walruses that have been shot and eventually killed by native hunters, but not necessarily recovered, which have sunk down to the bottom and then refloated as the animals died and then been washed up to shore. These, again, are walruses that have been shot and not recovered.
In August of 1991, Friends of Animals asked Sam to investigate these claims and, if possible, obtain video evidence. Flying bush south of Nome, Sam and videographer Daniel Zatz passed miles and miles of remote deserted beaches. Yet it didn't take long to find what they were looking for. The bodies of hundreds of dead walruses of varying ages and in varying stages of decomposition. Many were juveniles, with their tusks still in place. The evidence was there for the taking. Up and down the coastline, Sam and Daniel confirmed what many had suspected. Hundreds, if not thousands, of walruses were turning up dead under suspicious circumstances. But how did these walruses actually die? Undercover video shot by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and obtained by Sam through the Freedom of Information Act answered the question.
It's a bad situation. I think recent ban on elephant ivory and the lack of restrictions on the number of walrus that can be killed, that there's a serious potential here for a real problem concerning the walrus populations.
Carved walrus ivory is readily available throughout Alaska, and anyone can purchase it legally, provided the walruses were killed for subsistence and the ivory was carved by native Alaskans.
Word is that over in Little Diomede in St. Lawrence, you can get a walrus tusk, a raw one, for a bottle of Jack Daniels or an ounce of marijuana.
To prove the point, Sam flew to a small village in walrus country with the intent of obtaining raw, uncarved, and illegal walrus ivory.
I was on a silver rye, selling 25 a pound.
Yeah?
You'd trade something like that.
So I ain't familiar with what anything goes for up here in Alaska, man.
Half ounce, no?
Half ounce.
That's what sounds fair.
Yeah, I reckon so. It's a lot easier for me to get a half ounce than it is an ivory tusk. It's probably a lot easier for you to get a tusk than it is a half ounce.
You got bigger
Put that down. I guess the way it works is, despite what the Marine Mammal Protection Act says, raw ivory can be had for a number of things. You can trade alcohol for it. You can trade marijuana for it. And you can buy it, cash money. And word is that you can be accommodated in Anchorage if, you know, once you get to know somebody. So, you know, it's not exactly subsistence.